Democratic Institute, NDI, to Nigeria's February 25th, 2023 Presidential and National Assembly elections is pleased to share its preliminary findings. Our 40-person delegation, with members from 20 countries, was, in addition to myself, co-led by Ambassador Mark Green, President and CEO of the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars and former administrator of the USAID, NDI board member Ambassador John Carson, former Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs at the US Department of State, NDI board member Stacey Abraham, an American political leader, a lawyer, and a voting rights activist, and IRI board member Dana White, former assistant to the Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs. NDI President, Ambassador Derek Mitchell, and IRI President, Dr. Daniel Twining, all participated in this mission. Our mission visited Nigeria from February 20th to 27th, 2023, and deployed observer teams to 20 states, covering all 6 geographical zones and the Federal Capital Territory. Through this mission, NDI and IRI seek to reflect the international community's interest in and support for democratic electoral processes in Nigeria. This statement is meant to provide an accurate and impartial report on the election process to date and offer practical recommendations to improve future elections. It builds on the findings of joint IRI-NDI pre-election assessments conducted in July and December of 2022 and reports submitted by 6 Abuja-based thematic technical experts. The mission conducted its activities in accordance with the Nigerian law and the Declaration of Principles for International Election Observation, and collaborated closely with other international and regional observer missions that endorse the declaration while coordinating with impartial and independent citizen observers of organizations. In a moment, my co-leaders of the delegation will share the mission's key findings and recommendations. But before that, allow me to mention one particular recommendation that is very close to my heart. As an African woman leader, and considering Nigeria's position in Africa's democracy, I find that a lot more needs to be done as regards to women's participation in the political space. It is disappointing that women's political participation continues to decrease when Nigerian women are shining in all other social and economic sectors, both at home and globally. This concerns me, and as an African woman leader, I recommend that we African women employ our African-led strategies to engage our Nigerian brothers to decisively correct this anomaly. It is disheartening that Nigeria has less than 10% of women in elected office, while the country with 63% women representation globally is on the continent of Africa. Our own African Union has achieved 50-50% parity. Nigeria is too important to have weak women's participation in politics and key decision-making positions. Let me conclude by saying that the mission is grateful for the hospitality and cooperation it received from all Nigerians with whom it met, especially voters, government officials, members of the Independent National Electoral Commission, and polling officials, party members, citizen election observers, and civic activists. I'm truly grateful for your attention. Thank you.
Madam President has just said, to offer some practical recommendations to improve future elections. The mission noted that, despite the much-needed reforms from the Electoral Act of 2022, the elections still fell well short of Nigerians' legitimate and reasonable expectations. Logistical challenges and unchecked multiple incidents of political violence overshadowed the electoral process and impeded a substantial number of voters from participating. Ongoing currency and fuel shortages also imposed excessive burdens on voters and election officials. We noted that Nigerian marginalized groups, especially as Madam President has said so eloquently, especially women, continue to face barriers in seeking and obtaining political office. On Election Day, late openings in many parts of the country created tensions. Challenges in the electronic transfer of results and their timely upload undermined citizen confidence at crucial moments of the process. We also observed overcrowding in some polling units, which compromised the secrecy of the ballot there. Unfortunately, these logistical challenges and the scale of the electoral insecurity were both foreseeable and avoidable. Failure to address them prior to Election Day was, very simply put, a missed opportunity. Voters' trust in the process has been shaken by INEC's lack of transparency. There were numerous missed opportunities to explain the cause and extent of Election Day challenges. The combined effect of these problems disenfranchised Nigerian voters in many parts of the country, although the scope and scale are currently unknown. As the nation awaits the results of the electoral process, and with only 2 weeks until the March gubernatorial elections, the mission calls on INEC to be more proactive and responsive to stakeholder inquiries. We urge them to release official results in a timely and transparent manner. Nigerian political parties and candidates to cooperate in good faith with INEC. Political leaders to adhere fully to the February 2023 peace accord and to respect the will of the Nigerian people as expressed through the ballot box, and the appropriate agencies to conduct a full investigation of allegations of election violations and the prosecution of perpetrators. The mission recognizes that ultimately it's the people of Nigeria who will determine the credibility of these elections. Again, we are so impressed with what we have seen in their dedication to democracy. Thank you.
In the spirit of international cooperation, we offer the following 27 practical recommendations. And to enhance transparency, credible and inclusive electoral processes in the long term. These recommendations are made in good faith to mitigate potential for voter disenfranchisement, to protect Nigeria's democracy, and to support and amplify the voices of Nigeria's citizens as they work to deepen and strengthen their democracy, their democratic institutions, and practices. In the area of electoral administration, we recommend INEC develop realistic timelines and an operational framework that ensures the timely opening of polling stations and even distribution of materials, targeting specific resources to areas with historic patterns of delayed openings. Poll workers should receive better and recurrent training to ensure that the election procedures are evenly applied across the country. Lawmakers and INEC should work together to ensure contingency funding that can inoculate against economic and other unanticipated crises. In order to increase transparency and to build confidence in the results, the delegation recommends INEC to ensure result images are updated to its result viewing portal immediately as they are received and provide complete and timely polling unit level results on the portal in a machine analyzable and bulk format, as well as the local government area and state result forms. INEC should also address network connectivity limitations to ensure that all results can be electronically transmitted with the BEVIS at the polling unit level, and should conduct national stress tests to better anticipate and address challenges that could occur on Election Day. Finally, INEC should post polling unit level PVC data well before elections and in an open data format to ensure transparency on information necessary to verify turnout and reruns in cases of cancellations. Thank you very much, and I turn over to my colleague, the Honorable.
People are warm and genuinely caring, and they are people who deserve good governance. So in that regard, I would like to address our recommendations surrounding ensuring inclusive elections. Based on our observations, we believe INEC should dedicate more resources to assistive materials and voting centers for internally displaced persons and more robust surveys to improve the electoral participation of marginalized groups. Lawmakers should make steps to support absentee voting for voters who are not able to be at their registered polling unit on Election Day. Election observers, polling officials, security personnel, and out-of-state workers deserve to have their voices heard at the ballot box, and lawmakers should consider updating the Electoral Act of 2022 to allow for these provisions. Lawmakers should also prioritize gender quota legislation to increase the representation of women in elective offices. Political parties have a role too. They should provide material and financial resources to support women, youth, and candidates with disabilities, and develop robust recruitment and training strategies, and reform internal democratic procedures to ensure more inclusive candidate lists.
It's an honor to be here, and it has been an extraordinary privilege to witness this election, to watch and observe as Nigerians exercise their voices with dedication and enthusiasm, despite some facing challenging circumstances. Voter engagement is both profound and complex, and I believe we understand that. And while elections are a vital part of the process, it's the work that will happen next that truly determines the future success of this democracy. Nigeria holds the distinction of having one of the world's youngest populations. It has the largest democracy on the continent and one of the most populous democracies in the world. And so the credibility of the electoral process has a wide-ranging impact, not simply for the continent of Africa, but it has global meaning. Therefore, I would like to address our recommendations around expanding voter registration, which is an issue near and dear to my heart. Based on our observations, we have made the following initial recommendations. We urge INEC to take comprehensive measures to reduce the burden on voters to register and collect their PVC, including extension of timelines, increasing the number of distribution centers, employing mobile units for that distribution, targeting outreach to marginalized groups and to voters with limited mobility. We also recommend that INEC conduct a thorough and transparent audit of the voter rolls, ensuring that there are not multiple and double registrants or underage and deceased persons on the roll, while protecting duly registered voters from erroneous removal. I believe in the future of democracy in Nigeria, and I had the privilege of meeting with young voters in the lead up to this election, and I remain inspired by their energy and their engagement. Clearly, Nigerians deserve a path to change that goes through the electoral process. but this must happen when the country continues to show that democracy is essential and that their voices matter. Democracy is vital to the future of Nigeria, and every voter must be allowed to lift their voices and cast their votes to expand access to the franchise. And through expanded access to voter registration, we believe that that will help.
This is my very first trip to Nigeria, but it's not my first trip to the continent. And I just want to say thank you to all of the incredible voters that we met and for the very warm welcome we've received everywhere. And I also want to thank this very distinguished panel of delegates who I was very privileged to be with this whole week. So thank you, and to the staff of both IRI and NDI. Thank you. I am going to address media. And the media plays a critical role in any democracy. The media helps voters discern and separate perception from reality. But in order to do that, they need facts. So to reiterate the delegation's call for greater transparency before, during, and after the elections, we call on these recommendations not only for INEC, for also civil society. So to achieve this end, we recommend that political actors should refrain from unfounded, misleading, and inflammatory narratives regarding the electoral process and hold accountable those party members who spread false information or violent rhetoric that could destabilize the political environment. Social media platforms should take more aggressive steps to support human rights, civic engagement, and credible information during critical election periods. Nigerian media houses should continue to support fact-checking desks and partnerships to mitigate rumors and false information regarding electoral processes. And finally, INEC and civil society should expand civic and voter education efforts well in advance of Election Day to improve the application of procedures and citizens' understanding of the electoral process. Moving to our recommendations on reducing election violence, political actors should fully adhere to their peace accord commitments, including seeking redress of electoral complaints that may arise through proper legal channels and abide by the outcomes of judicial proceedings. Parties and candidates should hold accountable supporters to desist from any actions of violence, particularly during and after the tabulation and announcement of results. We all know that disinformation and violence are serious threats to any democracy. So we call on all citizens and their elected leaders to take these issues seriously and consider the information space and the media environment in which Nigerians are exercising their right to vote. Thank you.
After the signing of the peace accord, we followed up with meetings with the chair of INEC and some members, some candidates. And then when the candidate was killed in one of the states, we issued a statement immediately condemning that violence. We were of the view that once candidates have committed to observe peace, it is also their responsibility to make sure that their followers are sensitized, are educated to ensure that they don't commit acts of violence. But straight away, the very next day, we found that that commitment was not there and was not genuine. And that's why we condemned it immediately, and we condemn it even now.
A peace accord is meaningless, is a worthless piece of paper unless it is taken seriously. And secondly, the people who can best hold parties and leaders to account for failings under the peace accord are the voters.
Yeah.
And they should remember, they should make demands, and this is important, And the citizens of Nigeria need to make it very clear that simply signing another piece of paper, that does not end the exercise. That is not the end of the commitment. It is the beginning of the commitment and must be taken seriously. And as you heard in our recommendations, we talk about the peace accords being taken seriously. As to the other part of the question, it is important to remember what our role is. We are observers. We are accredited observers, and our job is to observe what we see, and based upon what we see, to offer ideas and recommendations and reactions. We are witnesses. And so other matters as to what other people should do, other leaders should do, quite frankly, that goes beyond the scope of what it is that we are here to do. And then the final point I will come back to over and over again, and Johnny, you made it clear, this is a story that is still being written, right? The elections are not over. And so on all of these subjects, from violence to final results, the story is being written as we speak, and it is important that we hold leaders accountable each step of the way.